how does a country really define itself? What are the actual values that make up its identity? And maybe even more basically, how does it decide where its own borders are? These aren't just philosophical questions, are they? They're really practical, foundational things.
Absolutely. And for any nation, the answers usually live inside its most important document.
Exactly. So welcome everyone to the Deep Dive. This is where we sift through sources, research, articles, our own notes, and try to pull out the really essential bits of knowledge for you. Today, we're tackling something truly, well, monumental. The Constitution of India. We're going to take a really close look at its preamble. People often call it the nation's soul, and then dig into those first few articles that actually define the Union and its territory. Our mission really is to unpack what it says about India's identity, its core values, and its geographical shape using the materials we've got right here. It's about getting past just the words, understanding what they mean for the people, for how the country is run. Okay, let's get into this fascinating blueprint. It's amazing how a nation like India chose to define itself right at the start.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating, I think, is that these opening parts, they're not just formalities or administrative details. They really lay the entire groundwork, the whole basis for India's governance, its ideology, its identity, for decades, really. They're the bedrock. Everything else is built on this, sets out the big principles and the practical stuff right from day one. This deep dive should really show the foresight and sometimes the very deliberate, maybe even controversial choices the framers made. It's an incredible document.
Right. Let's start right at the beginning then, the preamble. You called it the soul, and that feels right. It's definitely not just a fancy intro paragraph.
Not at all.
It tells you straight away who's supposed to be in charge, what India stands for, and, what the whole point of the Constitution is. It's like a statement of intent, a vision.
Exactly. And if you look at the bigger picture, it locks in this idea of popular sovereignty right from the get-go. Sets the tone. It doesn't just start. It declares really powerfully, we, the people of India. That's crucial. This isn't something handed down by a king or a colonial power. It's the people themselves who have solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. And then, the key part, they do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution.
Wow.
So the ultimate authority, the legitimacy, the power, it comes directly from the people. That's a huge break from the past, from colonial rule where laws were just imposed. Here, the people are the source.
That is an incredibly powerful statement, isn't it? Especially for a country just coming out of centuries of foreign rule. It's saying very clearly, this isn't just some document given to us. This is us, the citizens, taking ownership, deciding our own future.
Precisely.
And it even gives us the exact date for this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Pinpoints that moment of self-determination.
It does, yes. It specifies this 26th day of November, 1949. That date is really important. It's when the Constituent Assembly adopted it. Now, the Constitution actually came into full force on January 26, 1950, Republic Day. But November 26, 1949, that's the constitutional birthday, if you like, the day the blueprint was finalized.
Got it. The day they formally committed to it all.
Exactly, the point of commitment.
So, okay, it establishes who is doing this and when. Then the preamble jumps right into defining what kind of country India is going to be. It says, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic.
It's a lot of very significant words packed together. Each one must carry a huge amount of weight.
Absolutely. And, this is where it gets really interesting, especially if you're tracking how the document evolved.
Yeah.
The original Constitution, the one adopted back in November 49, it didn't actually have the words socialist and secular in the preamble.
Oh, really? Yeah. Those two, plus the word integrity in the phrase unity and integrity of the nation, were added much later. They came in with the Constitution 42nd Amendment Act, 1976. That's nearly 3 decades after the start.
Wow, okay. That's a huge historical point. These core defining words weren't always there from day one. What does it actually mean when a country decides to add words like that to its fundamental identity, looking back and amending it? Seems like a big moment of redefinition.
Well, it definitely raises that question, doesn't it? What does it mean to retrospectively make your core identity more explicit through an amendment? The 42nd Amendment itself is quite controversial, sometimes called a mini-constitution, because it changed so much. It happened during the emergency period in India. Now, to be fair, the ideas behind them is a kind of Nehruvian socialism, a commitment to religious pluralism. They were already floating around in India's politics and policies. But putting them into the text in 76 really solidified them, made them official, explicit. But it also kicked off debates that are still going on today. Did it fundamentally change the original spirit? Did it put too much of an ideological stamp where before things were maybe more implicit? It really shows that tension, between a constitution needing to adapt and its original principles, and how politics can shape even how a nation describes itself.
Fascinating. Okay, let's break down these big five pillars then, one by one. Starting with sovereign. What does that really mean for India, especially coming out of colonialism?
Sovereign basically means completely independent. India has the ultimate authority over its own affairs, both inside the country and in its dealings with the world. No external power tells India what to do.
That must have been massive back then.
Oh, absolutely monumental. After nearly 200 years of British rule, it meant India was its own master. Period. You see this in practice, right? Parliament makes laws for India without asking anyone else. The government signs treaties, joins the UN, sets its own foreign policy, all on its own authority. It's self-governance, pure and simple. National dignity restored.
Makes sense. Okay, next up. Socialist, the one added later. You mentioned it points to social and economic equality, even if it's not explicitly defined right there. How does that guide things? What did it look like in practice?
Yeah, the Constitution doesn't give a textbook definition, but including socialist clearly signals a specific direction the state should work towards reducing inequality, making sure resources and opportunities are shared more fairly. It means the government actively steps in for social welfare. It's not just a hands-off free market approach.
Oh, things like...
Well, historically, you saw things like major land reforms trying to redistribute land, the nationalization of big industries like banks and insurance back in the mid-20th century, building up the large public sector. The goal was distributive justice, trying to stop wealth getting stuck in just a few hands. It lines up very closely with the directive principles of state policy in Part 4 of the Constitution, which push the state to promote people's welfare and reduce inequalities. The methods change over time, obviously, but that core idea of social and economic justice is baked in.
Right, so it's an active state role. And then secular, also added in 76. This is a really interesting one and often debated in India, isn't it? How is Indian secularism different from, say, the Western idea?
It really is different. Indian secularism means India doesn't have an official state religion. But unlike, say, France, with its strict separation of church and state, or the U.S. model, Indian secularism is often described as positive secularism, or sarva dharma samphava.
Which means?
Equal respect for all religions. The state isn't aloof from religion. It acknowledges all religions and treats them equally. No favoritism, no discrimination. You see this in the Constitution, freedom of conscience, the right to practice and even propagate your religion. That's in Part 3, the fundamental rights. And Article 27 specifically says you can't be taxed to promote any particular religion. So the state stays neutral but engaged, respecting all faiths. The aim is religious harmony in a hugely diverse country. Of course, putting it into practice brings its own challenges, balancing state action and religious freedom.
So it's not about keeping religion out of public life, but about the state ensuring equal space and respect for all religions. That's a really key difference. Okay, moving on. Democratic.
Yeah.
We probably have a general idea, but how does the Indian Constitution frame it?
Fundamentally, it's Abraham Lincoln's definition. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. In practice, this means representative democracy. The big mechanism is elections based on universal adult suffrage. Every adult citizen gets to vote, no matter their gender, caste, religion, wealth, anything.
Right. One person, one vote.
Exactly. Regular elections are held for the Lok Sabha, the main house of parliament at the national level, and for the state legislative assemblies. This keeps the government accountable to the people through their elected representatives. It's about putting power in the hands of ordinary citizens via the ballot box. It's how we, the people, actually exercise that sovereignty we talked about earlier.
Makes sense. And the last of the five? Republic. What's the core idea there? How does it make India different from, say, a monarchy?
Republic simply means the head of state is elected, not hereditary. Unlike the UK, for example, where the monarch inherits the position, in a republic, the top job is filled through election, either directly or indirectly.
And in India's case?
In India, the president is the head of the executive branch, and the president is elected by an electoral college made up of elected members of parliament and the state legislative assemblies. This means the highest office is based on merit and choice, not birthright. It reinforces democracy, ensures accountability, and symbolizes that final break from monarchy and the colonial past. The power rests with the people, represented by someone they chose.
Okay, so those five terms, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic, they define the fundamental nature of the Indian state. But the preamble goes further, right? It also lays out the big goals, the aspirations it wants to achieve for all citizens, the ideals the nation is striving for. Let's look at those, starting with justice.
Yes, absolutely. The preamble promises justice, social, economic, and political. That's incredibly broad. It's not just about courts and laws, it's about fairness in every part of life.
Social, economic, political, all three.
All three. Social justice means fighting discrimination based on caste, religion, gender, etc., aiming for social equality. Economic justice is about reducing wealth gaps, ensuring fair economic opportunities, tackling poverty. Political justice means everyone has equal political rights voting, running for office. Again, the directive principles in Part 4 really flesh this out. They tell the state to build a social order that promotes welfare, provides equal justice, offers free legal aid so poverty doesn't block access to the courts. It's about creating a level playing field, giving everyone a fair shot regardless of their background.
That's a really deep commitment, justice in society, in the economy, in politics, not just legal. Okay, what about liberty? What freedoms does the Constitution guarantee?
Liberty in the preamble is defined very broadly of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. This guarantees core individual freedoms. It recognizes that personal autonomy, thinking for yourself, is vital in a democracy.
And where do we see these spelled out?
These are mainly found in Part 3, the fundamental rights. The right to freedom, for instance, includes freedom of speech and expression under Article 19. That's fundamental, being able to say what you think. Freedom of conscience, the right to practice your religion, those are also there. It's about protecting the individual's space to think, believe, and express themselves without the state interfering too much. Crucial for a diverse society where ideas need to flow freely.
Absolutely. And equality. How does the Constitution try to deliver on that promise in such a complex society?
Equality is stated as of status and of opportunity. Two key aspects there. First, eliminating discrimination. Everyone should be treated with equal respect and dignity, whatever their background. Second, providing equal chances, making sure opportunities aren't just for the privileged few.
So concrete examples.
Again, Part 3, the right to equality. Article 14 guarantees equality before the law and equal protection of the laws. Same laws apply to everyone, same treatment under the law. Article 16 promises equality of opportunity in public employment, no discrimination in government jobs based on religion, race, caste, sex, descent, birthplace, residence. The whole point is that your background shouldn't dictate your future. The Constitution tries to put legal and social safeguards in place to actively promote that level playing field.
Right. And finally, the last objective, fraternity. Sounds like brotherhood, unity. What does it mean specifically here?
Fraternity is exactly that, promoting a sense of common brotherhood, oneness among all citizens. It's about fostering a spirit that cuts across all the differences, religion, language, region, caste. It's seen as essential for two things: assuring the dignity of every individual, and crucially, ensuring the unity and integrity of the nation.
And integrity was also added by that 42nd Amendment.
Yes, it was. Adding integrity really underscores the commitment to national cohesion, holding the country together territorially and emotionally. It highlights how vital social harmony is, especially in a place as diverse as India, where things could potentially pull apart. You even see this reflected in the fundamental duties added in Part IVA, also by the 42nd Amendment. One duty is literally to promote harmony and common brotherhood, transcending all those diversities. The very idea of India as a union of states, which we'll get to, also points to this, binding diverse parts into one whole. And the thinking is, you can only have true fraternity if individual dignity is respected first. People need to feel valued to feel part of a shared national project.
Okay, so we've explored the preamble, the soul, the ideals, the values. Now we need to look at how the Constitution defines the actual physical reality of India. Where does it start? Where does it end? How do all these diverse parts come together into one country? That brings us to Part 1 of the Constitution, the Union and its territory. This is where things get, well, tangible. Let's dive into Article 1, name and territory of the Union.
Right, Article 1 does exactly that. It sets out the official name and the political structure right away. Clause 1 says, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states.
India, that is Bharat. Interesting, the dual name right there. And Union of States. Why that specific phrase, not just federation?
That phrase, union of states, is very deliberate and significant. It implies a specific kind of federal relationship. Unlike some federations where states might have joined together by agreement and could potentially leave, the Indian Union is considered indestructible. The states themselves, however, aren't. Parliament can change their borders, even abolish them.
So the union itself can't be broken, but the states within it can be rearranged.
Exactly. It's often described as an indestructible union of destructible states. This points to a strong central government within the federal system. It reflects the massive concern about fragmentation back when India became independent, needing to integrate hundreds of princely states and manage huge linguistic diversity. Unity was paramount.
That makes sense. A very strong statement of unity from the start. And it mentions a schedule for the specific territories.
Yes, Clause 2 says, "The states and the territories thereof shall be as specified in the first schedule." This links the Constitution to a separate list, the first schedule, which details all the states and union territories and their boundaries. And importantly, this clause itself was updated by the Seventh Amendment Act in 1956.
The big reorganization of states.
Precisely. That followed the States Reorganization Act, which redrew state boundaries mainly along linguistic lines. So the Constitution showed right away it could adapt its own schedules to reflect major changes on the ground.
Okay, so what exactly makes up the territory of India according to the Constitution? Is it just the states?
Clause 3 spells it out. The territory includes three things. First, the territories of the states listed in the first schedule. Second, the union territories, also specified in the first schedule. This part was also updated by the Seventh Amendment. And third, and this is really forward-thinking, it includes such other territories as may be acquired.
Acquired territories, like in the future.
Exactly. This clause allows India to incorporate territories it might acquire later through treaties, maybe purchase or other means, without needing a constitutional amendment every time. It gave the Constitution flexibility. Think about territories like Goa or Pondicherry. They were acquired after 1950 and integrated smoothly into India thanks to this provision, just using ordinary laws passed by Parliament.
That's really clever, building in that flexibility for the future, which kind of leads us perfectly into Articles 2 and 3. These seem to give Parliament some pretty major powers over the map of India, but in different ways. Let's start with Article 2, admission or establishment of new states.
Right. Article 2 deals with bringing new territories into the Union, territories that weren't part of India before. It says, Parliament may by law admit into the Union or establish new states on such terms and conditions as it thinks fit.
So Parliament decides, and it sets the terms.
Yes, the power is solely with Parliament. The key word is new states entities coming in from outside the existing Union. The classic example is Sikkim. There was briefly an Article 2A, added by the 35th Amendment in 1974, making Sikkim an associate state. Then, the 36th Amendment in 1975 repealed 2A and made Sikkim a full state. That whole process happened under the power given by Article 2, integrating a territory that was previously outside.
Okay, so Article 2 is for adding completely new areas, got it. Which means Article 3 must be about rearranging the pieces already inside India.
Exactly. Article 3 is all about Parliament's power to reconfigure the existing territory of the Union. It gives Parliament sweeping authority to change the internal map. By law, Parliament can, 1, form a new state by taking territory from an existing state, or by uniting two or more states or parts of states, or even joining some territory to part of a state.
So creating new states out of old ones.
Yes. 2, it can increase the area of any state. 3, it can diminish the area of any state. 4, it can alter the boundaries of any state. And 5, it can even change the name of any state.
Wow. That's a lot of power over the internal shape of the country. Think about states formed like Telangana recently, or way back with the linguistic states like Maharashtra, Gujarat. That all comes under Article 3.
Precisely. All those major reorganizations happened using the powers granted under Article 3.
Okay, but with such huge power, surely there have to be some checks.
Yeah.
Can't Parliament just wake up one day and decide to carve up a state or change its name? What about the state itself? Does it get any say?
Yes, there are important procedural safeguards, but they don't give the state a veto. First, any bill to do these things under Article 3 needs the president's prior recommendation before it can even be introduced in Parliament.
Okay, so the president has to sign off first.
Correct. And second, and this is crucial, unless the change only affects a union territory, the president must refer the bill to the legislature of the state or states being affected. They have to be given a chance to express their views on the proposal within a certain time limit.
Ah, so they get consulted? They get to give their opinion?
Yes, they get to express their views. But, and this is the key, Parliament is not bound by those views. If the state legislature says, no, we don't want this, Parliament can still go ahead and pass the law.
Right, so it's consultation, not consent. The center ultimately decides. That does sound like a strong central power.
It is. It's a consultative process, making sure state perspectives are heard. But the final call rests with the Union Parliament. It reflects that balance we talked about, respecting states by consulting them, but keeping the power with the center to ensure national unity and allow for necessary reorganization without getting blocked by one state. It was definitely shaped by those early fears of the country breaking apart.
And there were some clarifications added, too, about what stayed means in this context. Explanations given, too.
Yes, those add important detail. Explanation, I says, that when Article 3 talks about forming, increasing, diminishing, altering boundaries or names, it includes union territories. So Parliament can change UT boundaries or names just like states. But for the proviso about referring the bill to the legislature for views, state does not include a union territory. Parliament doesn't need to consult UT legislatures.
Okay, so UTs are treated differently in the consultation part.
Correct. And Explanation 2 clarifies that the power to form a new state clause also includes forming a new union territory by combining parts of existing states, or UTs. It just gives Parliament maximum flexibility in how it reorganizes any part of India's territory, state, or UT.
Okay, so Parliament has these huge powers under Articles 2 and 3, bringing new areas in or completely rearranging the existing internal map. Then we get Article 4. This seems to tie up the loose ends procedurally, but you mentioned it has a really surprising twist regarding how these changes are viewed constitutionally.
Yes, Article 4 is critical for understanding the process and the status of these changes. Clause 1 basically says that any law made under Article 2 or 3 must also automatically include changes to the first schedule, the list of state CTs, and the fourth schedule, which allocates seats in the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of Parliament.
So it makes the necessary follow-on changes automatic, like updating the lists.
Exactly. It ensures everything stays consistent. The law can also include other necessary details about representation in Parliament or state legislatures, whatever is needed for the transition. But the real bombshell is Clause 2.
Okay, what does Clause 2 say?
Clause 2 states, very clearly, no such law as aforesaid shall be deemed to be an amendment of this Constitution for the purposes of Article 368.
Wait, so making a new state, changing boundaries, changing names, none of that counts as amending the Constitution itself?
Precisely. That's the aha moment. It means Parliament can do all these incredibly significant things, redraw the map of India using the process for ordinary legislation, not the much tougher process required for amending the Constitution under Article 368.
Wow. Okay, unpack that. What does that mean in practice? Why is that such a big deal? Constitutional amendments are usually hard to pass, right?
Exactly. Article 368 generally requires special majorities in Parliament, usually a majority of the total membership of each house, and a two-thirds majority of those present and voting. For some really fundamental changes affecting the federal structure, it even needs ratification by half the state legislatures. It's designed to be difficult to ensure broad consensus for changing the core document. But Article 4.2 says changes under Articles 2 and 3 bypass all of that. They can be passed by a simple majority in Parliament, just like any regular law.
So essentially, changing the very shape and composition of the country is treated like passing a routine bill, and not like changing the fundamental rules of the game.
That's a good way to put it. It shows how much flexibility the framers wanted to build in for managing India's internal structure. It allows the country to adapt to regional aspirations, administrative needs, political situations relatively quickly without hitting the high bar of Article 368. It gives the central parliament enormous power over the constituent units. It's a very unique feature compared to many other federal systems.
It certainly explains how India has been able to reorganize its states so many times over the decades. That flexibility is really built into the core. It does raise questions, though, about the balance of power.
It absolutely does. It's a key aspect of India's unique brand of federalism, strong center, adaptable structure. It allows for responsiveness, but also concentrates significant power over territory at the national level. It begs the question, what are the long-term effects of this flexibility on the relationship between the center and the states?
Yeah, a powerful mechanism designed for unity and adaptation, but with definite implications for that federal balance. Hashtag tag outro. And just like that, we've journeyed through the very foundations of the Indian Constitution. We started with the Preamble, that powerful statement of who Indians are, what they stand for, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and what they aspire to. Justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. It really is the nation's guiding compass.
And then we saw how Part I gets down to the nuts and bolts, defining India, that is Bharat, as a union of states. We looked at Parliament's incredible power to admit new states under Article 2.